Bhutan, high in the Himalayas. One of the last Buddhist kingdoms. A country rich in ancient culture, but also very forward-thinking. Bhutan is carbon negative. It's the only country in the world that absorbs more carbon than it produces. Achieved by looking after nature. Despite this, Bhutan is now vulnerable to climate change, which is impacting our planet faster than ever before. This is a global problem that needs a global solution. We're at a turning point in history and moving in a new direction. How we live with nature now will determine our future. A new age is upon us. The age of nature.
So the fact that we are carbon negative today perhaps may be an example to the rest of the world, but it's also very important in a sense that we have to realize and acknowledge that this is the result of decades of implementation of enlightened but courageous policies. By law, we are required to maintain a minimum of 60% forest coverage. But in reality, there's 70%, a little more than 70% of our country is under forest cover. Why are forests important? Well, for many reasons. And I can tell you two very important reasons. The first everybody knows of is because it helps to fight against climate change. These forests are a vast reserve of carbon. It's a carbon sink. The second reason is that our forests are largely pristine. They are natural, they've been undisturbed. So our forests today are a safe haven for a very rich biodiversity. Trees, plants, fungi. This is why it's very important that we protect the forests as they are. Our country rises from about 100 meters above sea level all the way up to about 7,500 meters above sea level. Bhutan is nothing but mountains and valleys.
% of the population live along the banks of rivers. It's the only farmable land.
We've always had a very strong association with water. In terms of agriculture, obviously it's very important. As you can see, the paddy fields around here, they've required water, and for centuries we've been cultivating rice in these valleys.
The Bhutanese also harness the power of their rivers to generate renewable energy. It contributes to the country's carbon negative status. But people here still face an uncertain future. They are on the front line of the climate crisis. As a politician, Tsering Tobgay is concerned for the future of his country. He's monitoring the growing threat which can only be seen high up in the mountains.
The entire Himalayan region is the world's third largest repository of ice after the North and South poles. So this is why some scientists have called this region the third pole. Global warming and climate change is affecting the glaciers in the Himalayas, just like they're affecting glaciers all over the world.
Over 2/3 of these glaciers are expected to melt by the turn of the century. And the glacial lakes holding the meltwater are growing. Currently held back by natural dams, it's only a matter of time before the dams will give. And the flooding will be disastrous. In 2010, a team of farmers and villagers were recruited to lower the water levels of a lake that was near bursting point. This involved moving each rock by hand to slowly release the water. Working at altitude with little oxygen and in freezing conditions, it took 5 years in total to lower it by 15 feet. This has bought some time, but it hasn't solved the problem. The glaciers are continuing to melt. And Bhutan isn't the only country that's vulnerable. 8 others would also be directly affected by the melting of the Himalayan ice cap, impacting up to 1.6 billion people.
Well, on the one hand, I know that humanity will persevere. We will prevail. And now protecting the glaciers can't be done by a single country. The entire world must come together to control global warming. No one country can address climate change adequately to reverse its effects or to prevent its future effects. So we must come together as a world. So if a small country can do that, my submission is larger, more powerful, more rich countries with a lot more knowledge and experience, they can obviously do a lot more, and they must.
Bhutan cannot fight climate change alone. It is a global problem that needs global solutions.
Ultimately, if we're going to understand how to stop climate change, we need to understand our planet. And so that's what we do.